start off by asking you guys a question. How are you finding everything so far? I know you've just finished exams, so there's that, ABW week for the Year 11s. Yeah, hard? How do you guys feel about getting into medical school and your chances and things like that? Because I know everybody says, oh, it's really hard or something like that, but what are your thoughts on it? Okay?
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard? Okay. So what I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit about is firstly, the little bits of criteria that you kind of need to meet to maximise your chances of getting into med school. So it's bits of knowledge that you guys might already know, but if you do already know it, you're definitely way ahead of me when I was sitting in your position, because I didn't know a lot of this stuff, which I wish I did know. Okay, so first things first, the subjects you guys are taking. Most medical schools are going to look at English and maths, which you guys have to take anyway, SL or higher, and chemistry. Are all of you guys taking chemistry? Yep, okay. So most medical schools will be happy with chem. Some might be okay with biology instead of chemistry, but if you take chem, you're pretty much safe. Some will let you say either or, so keep that in mind. The second thing, which I'm assuming is what you guys are all a bit worried about, is getting the right IB score to get in, okay? So, for the most part, most medical schools, the cutoff, I'll talk in terms of ATAR because the IB conversion keeps changing and I'm not really up to date with it, is the cutoff is at ATAR 90, but you need to do quite a lot better than that. So all that's saying is if you get below a 90, they won't even consider your application. If you get above a 90, that's when it starts ranking in with everyone else, okay? I can't give you much advice on that. You guys have to study, you guys have to get the marks, right? UMAT. Are all of you guys writing UMAT, year 12 people? Okay. Is there any reason if you've chosen not to write UMAT, why you've chosen not to write UMAT? Okay. And that's true. Griffith doesn't need a UMAT anymore. What I will say about UMAT, which is the big thing that I overlooked, is the importance of it. A lot of people kind of went, oh, I'll just do it on the side and I won't really put much effort into it and I won't really study for it and I'll focus on school. And then all of a sudden you realise the actual weight that UMAT has on your entry into medical school. Okay, so there's a lot of training courses out there. That is the best way to prepare. I can't remember what it's called anymore. Med entry, that's it, I did it. And they provide you with that, like the whole bank of questions to go through and all the drills to work through and things like that. That is the best way to prepare. That's pretty much all I can tell you about UMAT, but don't overlook it. The other thing I would suggest is if you are desperate to get into med school, like that is the only thing you can see yourself doing and the only thing you can see yourself is as a doctor in, 6-8 years time, don't close your doors. So apply interstate. I didn't, and that was silly of me, but I didn't. But there's no harm in you doing that. I remember when I was looking into it, it looked really complicated to me and I didn't understand QTAC versus VTAC versus everything else, and I went, I'm just not going to do it. But in hindsight, I'd strongly advise that you apply to as many universities as you can. And what I would say is do the UMAT and look at the entry criteria for every single university. Every university has a completely different entry criteria. So some, like Griffith, will only take your IB score. That's it. They'll rank you based on your IB score. Some, like UQ, will take your IB score and your UMAT. There's others that have your IB score, your UMAT, and an interview. Are you guys familiar with the interviews? Yep. Are you guys familiar with how to prepare for the interviews? And you're allowed to say no. Not really? Okay. So the first thing you need to look at is every university has a different style of interview. So when I went through, most of them were panel type interviews where there's 3 or 4 people in front of you, they ask you some questions, they ask you to do some problem solving. The scenario I got was you're working in a hospital triage, there's been this massive catastrophe where there's a whole number of people coming in. How are you going to triage them through the system to make sure the system doesn't get clogged? So I think it was like a plane crash or something, or some natural disaster or something like that. And then they ask you a little bit about yourself and to talk about yourself. So with that kind of thing, I'd recommend just be yourself, be as natural as possible, because the panel are trained to pick out people who are being fake. So just be as natural as possible, answer the questions as sincerely as you can. The other type of interview that's coming through slowly now, and you'll again have to look into which universities do this, is a station type interview. So it's more like the postgraduate interview type, where you go station by station and each one has a problem. So one will be this lady that's just like bawling her eyes out, and they'll just put you in and be like, deal with this. Okay, so you don't need to know anything about medicine at all, but it's just testing what kind of person you are. But for a lot of people who have never been in that situation, it can be quite daunting. The best way I think to prepare for interviews is, especially in this day and age, there's online forums for every single university. Jump on, have a talk to the other people that are applying, have a talk to the people that have got it in previous years. They'll tell you exactly what to expect. And that's the best way to prepare. And then practice amongst yourselves. So if you're not naturally kind of comfortable with talking and expressing yourself and that type of thing, get comfortable with it now. Okay, any questions so far? No, I don't bite. I'm not scary. Yeah.
What uni did you go to?
I'm at Griffith. So this is, a little bit about me. So I got into the Bachelor of Medical Science at Griffith, which is the 2-year course. If you get into it, be prepared to be called a twosie for the rest of your medical degree. It's a thing. People say, what was your undergrad? I went med sci. They'll go, oh, another twosie. So get used to that. And this is my final year, so I graduate, hopefully, at the end of this year. If all goes, yeah, or I'll see you next year again doing this same speech. But hopefully at the end of this year. So, yeah, I went to Griffith. I'll tell you a little funny story about how important UMAT was for me. They told us that the entry requirements was an OP 1 to 3 plus your UMAT score. And the way it worked is you got your UMAT score, you went and did an interview, and then they gave you a conditional offer. For our year, they gave us unconditional offers. So before I even wrote my final set of IB exams, I'd been told I'd been accepted into medical school based on my UMAT and my interview. And then the following year, Griffith went and scrapped the UMAT and the interview. So it just goes to show you need to keep up to date with the entry requirements for every single university, and it will change every year. The other big mistake a lot of people made, JCU, have any of you guys looked into JCU? So there's a written application for JCU. Yeah, it's really important. You think that it's just a written application and they won't look at it? They look at it a lot. One of my best friends is on the panel that sifts through the applications. They give it a very, very high weighting in your application process. And also with your interviews, they will be over your Christmas break. So they'll be in that November, December, January period, and every state and every university will have a different date. So make sure that you're aware of those, because there was a lot of people that booked holidays to go overseas and they were sitting in Europe and then went, so I've got my interview at Monash today. Don't do that. You're just wasting opportunities. It's all about planning and being on top of it. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. That's about it from there. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So assuming you didn't get into medical school at the end of this year or next year, or straight out of school, does anyone know what their opportunities are after that? Yep, so do you know what's involved in postgraduate medical school entry? Yeah. So that's one. Now the lesser known option is something called a non-standard entry, which there was actually a student that graduated with me that didn't get in straight out of his year at the Academy and got in via non-standard entry. So only some universities offer this. I think he got in at Newcastle or Armidale or something like that. Basically all this means is it allows you to rewrite UMAT and apply again, assuming you have not completed your undergraduate degree. So not all universities will offer that to you, but it is definitely something to keep in mind. So if what let you down was your UMAT score, or you didn't write UMAT, you can write that and gain admission that way. If what let you down was your ATAR score, doing a semester at university can actually boost that if you get a good GPA for your non-standard entries. So don't forget about that one, and it's one that a lot of people don't know about. And then obviously your postgraduate entry. So have you guys thought about, I guess, thinking a bit negatively here, I suppose, but what degrees you would do if you didn't get into medical school? Okay. How many of you chose biomed? I thought so, and it's what a lot of people do. And by all means, I will never say anything bad about the biomed degree. I think it's great. It's a perfectly good degree. What I will tell you is that it does absolutely nothing to prepare you for medical school. It is very, very molecularly focused, which is what my medical science degree was as well. You do all of this molecular genetics and biochemistry and organic chemistry, and you get to med school and everyone sits there and doesn't care about it anymore. So the 2 degrees that I wish I had done would have been exercise science, which is your pre-physio degree, does so much anatomy and physiology. It really prepares you well. They come in and they know their stuff, whereas I'm sitting there drawing like a Krebs cycle or glycolysis or something, and everyone's looking at me going, well, we don't care. Or pharmacy, because to this day, I look at drugs and I have no idea what they do. Whereas the pharmacists come in and they know exactly what's going on. Keep it in mind. Again, pharmacy has a much heavier workload, so preparing for GAMSAT in that time period could be difficult. Exercise science is actually quite a simple workload. There's nothing wrong with biomed. Most of the biomed people are doing it because they want to get into med school at some point. Cool? Okay. And keeping in mind, the best way to decide is to go to your university's website and pick the course that you want to do and have a look at the subjects under the course. So when I say biomed, I'm talking about biomed at Griffith. I don't know what the course structure is like at any other university. So the things that I say aren't useful are things like biochemistry, organic chemistry, molecular genetics. You'll never use it again. So if that interests you, by all means go do it. I'm not trying to deter you from it. I'm just saying keep that in mind. Okay. So, assuming you guys all did get into medical school, yay, well done. What can you expect? So, what I want to ask you guys is, what do you guys expect from med school? Anybody? Somebody? A lot of work? Anything else? A lot of practical experience? Come on, somebody say fun. Is anyone going to have fun at med school? No, evidently not. So, I guess a lot of work is what I hear the most often. They go, oh, how much do you have to study? You do have to study, but what you guys specifically will find is that the IB curriculum prepares you extremely well. If you're anything like most of us, we had this massive jump coming from whatever school we were at before to coming here and going, oh, so now I actually need to study, right? Because most of you guys would have probably been pretty smart in your old schools and done pretty well with minimal work. Then you come here and you go, great. So to get that 7, I need to put some work in. It's better to have that learning curve here now than to wait till you get to uni and there's no one to support you. You guys have amazing teachers here that if it all kind of falls apart, they'll help you put it back together. You have that breakdown at uni, no one's going to care. No one's holding your hand. There's 300 other students in biomed with you, and you're their last priority. So you'll find that, yeah, it's hard work, but the people that do well in medical school aren't the smart ones, they're the organised ones. So you just have to keep on top of the work. It's very structured, it's very organised, just keep on top of it. Okay? What did you say? Practical experience. So, I wish. I mean, it's good. You do, if you get into Griffith anyway, I'll talk about the Griffith program, you do 2 years of medical science. They've changed the medical science degree since I went through to have one subject that teaches you how to interact with other people. I'm not the best person to ask about that. I think that you should have the ability to interact appropriately with other people when you come out of school. I mean, it's not that hard. And it teaches there's certain elements that it does teach you well, which is addressing sensitive topics and approaching sensitive topics with people, breaking bad news to people, telling people, I've told at least 10 people that they've had cancer. And that's terrifying to have to tell someone that. But that is your job. That's what you're going to have to do. So the medical science degree at that point will prepare you for that. That's about all the clinical experience you're going to get in those 2 years. And it's not really clinical, it's just communication. Then in your 4 years of your med degree at Griffith, 2 of those years are entirely sitting in a lecture theatre and listening to more lectures. You get 1 hour a week for 7 weeks of that year at the hospital. So it's not that much. You do a lot of simulated scenarios, so you'll have actors and things coming in where you have to work with them and they pretend they have something, and some lady will start crying and they'll present you with hard scenarios, but it's all fake. And to tell you the truth, when you know it's fake, you find it very hard to take it seriously. As much as you try, it's hard. Because I remember one of the scenarios in I think it was my second or third week, was you had to tell a mother that she had run over her child, and the child had passed away. But when you know that that's not actually happened, it's very difficult to approach that scenario as you would with a real person. Nonetheless, it's good training. Then in your third and fourth year, you live in that hospital. 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. Okay? Yeah, it's a lot of work. Which leads me to, don't forget that you have a life outside of medical school. Because you do. I know Miss Lehman was saying before that I sing, and I still sing. I work as a singing teacher. That's what brings me money. That's how I live, right? But don't forget that you have a life outside of medical school. And you'll find that the culture of med school across Australia really tries to promote that. So you will have a ton of social events. We work hard, we play harder, okay? But you'll have a ton of social events. You'll have opportunities. We put on, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Med Review or Law Review. It's basically like a mini musical acting show that we put on every year. The law school does it. Medical schools across Australia do it as well. So that's heaps of fun. You'll have loads of opportunities to get involved, whether that's on student committees or being part. I had a whole list. I'm just going to figure it out, aren't I? Anyway, nonetheless, you'll have a whole lot of stuff to be a part of, and make sure you take the time to be a part of that. That being said, keep friends outside of med school, because you'll very quickly find you have an inability to talk about anything else. Because to an extent, it's a very secluded community. Kind of once you've made it into that med school world, you tend to live in this bubble, and it's not great. And doctors do it too. Whether it's doctors or med students or whatever, it tends to be this little bubble. Keep your friends outside. See other people. Talk about stuff that isn't science. So keep up all your hobbies. Make sure you do that. And I can't stress that enough, because you will fall apart if you don't. It's just, well, most of you will. I mean, some of you might manage, but if you're anything like me, I can't study 24/7. I can't do it. I need something to take my mind off it. And so whether that's you play sport, you do music, you whatever, you read books, keep something on the side above all that. Okay. Any questions for me? Because that's kind of all I have to say. Yes, that is all I have to say.
Is it possible to do research while doing medical science?
While doing medical science. So it's not part of the program, but if you approach the right staff members, they'll never say no to research. What I will say is a medical science program depends what subjects you take here, but typically it's 5 subjects a semester, and you do 3 semesters a year, so you have winter and summer semesters. Holidays aren't a thing for those 2 years. And also they're not a thing in medical school. I had a week off last week, that's it for the year. You work. So keep in mind about taking extra things on. I know that, you want to build your resume and for it to look fantastic, and when you apply to all your specialty colleges and things, to be like, look at all the stuff that I've done. But keep in mind that it doesn't overwhelm you, because it very well could. For you guys, if you do get into medical science or biomed, you'll get credits and things depending on what subjects you've taken and stuff, so it could bring the workload down a little bit. Any other questions? When is UMAT for you guys? 27th? Okay, so what, just over a month away? You guys feeling all right about it? I see lots of head shaking. Okay, spend the next month and 5 days just working on it, okay? I can't stress enough how important it is for you to do well in those subjects. I know plenty of my friends who have done extremely well in their Year 12 scores, but just haven't gained admission because of UMAT.
Do you already have your friends had bad experiences in hospital?
Yeah, all the time. You know, I don't know if you guys ever watched, I think it was on ABC, about bullying in the medical workplace or something. Is that showing how old I am that I watch ABC? I don't know.
I watch ABC.
Yeah.
I watch ABC, so obviously he's not old.
So it is a problem, and it's a problem hopefully with our generation coming through will fix. But you get yelled at and you get told that you're stupid and you know nothing. And for someone like me, I kind of go into a scenario like that and I go, well, I am stupid and I don't know anything. Because these are people that have been working for 30, 40 years in that industry. And all I want to do is learn from them. You have to grow a thick skin. Your first year out of medical, you think medical school's hard? Your first year out of medical school, you're supposed to work a 40-hour week. They work about 60. And that's not medicine. They work 60 hours doing admin. They're typing discharge summaries and they're typing notes for patients, and it's all just admin and filling out paperwork. So it's a long haul. I won't say it's easy breezy, but if you love it, you come home. There's days that I've come home to my housemates and gone, ugh, why did I choose this? Every year before exam block, twice a year without a fail, I'll have a mental breakdown and wonder why I picked this as my career and why I wanted to do it. And I'll sit there and cry and I'll call my mum up and she'll be like, oh, it's all right, you're just going through this again. But you come out the other side and you're kind of thankful for what you chose. So your support networks are really important, but I think you'll find that the way the culture is that you'll make friends so easily. Everyone's kind of sticking with each other. So any other questions? Yeah. You first.
When you applied, I saw that on my group, which was one of the learners training, where you did that you would understand another language, then first training. Does that when you apply, does that say colour like Iranian training? Not like an accent.
So you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I'm aware, the year that I applied, they didn't actually accept bonus rankings for the medical science program.
They don't accept you quite right.
Yeah.
But they do at universities.
Yeah. So I know very little about other universities, which is why I stress to you guys, check the entry criteria for everything, look through it meticulously, know what you're getting into, and make sure you've ticked every box. Because that's where people fall apart. They'll be like, oh, I forgot about my interview, oh, I didn't write UMAT, oh, I didn't do this. And then they've just kind of closed this door without even knowing it. But yeah, no, so Griffith doesn't do that anymore.
In the 2 years that you're at the hospital, do you kind of just shadow people and watch them?
Yep, so assuming the curriculum stays quite similar, you spend 6 to 7 weeks in a variety of specialties. So last year was my first year in the hospital, so I did 6 weeks on aged care, cancer care, 6 weeks on just general medicine, and 6 weeks in mental health, then 6 weeks on surgery, 6 weeks on women's health, and 6 weeks on pediatrics. And you rotate through. You spend some time with a team. Your first year, they kind of cotton wool you a little bit because they're not really sure where your standard is. So what I would recommend to you right through your entire career, ask questions, ask if you can do things. That's the only way they're going to know, because the nice people anyway don't want to put you on the spot and say, hey, go do this, when they don't know whether you can do it or not. So you're better off asking, hey, I really want to practice this skill, can I do it? And typically they let you. And by the end of the rotations, I was taking histories and doing examinations on patients on my own and just presenting to someone who'd go, oh, okay, well, let's do this with them then. In your 4th year, you do an elective and a selective, which pretty much just means free choice. You do whatever you're interested in. And you do emergency, general practice, and then for some reason they shove it all into 7 weeks. You do anaesthetics, orthopedics, and ICU all in 7 weeks. So keeping that in mind, 6 weeks on general medicine, that's it. you've got a heck of a lot of information to learn in 6 weeks. And the scary thing about your clinical years, so the years that you're in the hospital, is that you're learning how to be a good doctor in the hospital, but you're not learning how to pass exams. So you come home and then you've got to study to learn how to pass exams. And that's the hardest bit, I think, of your final 2 years. So, yeah, your final 2 years.
What exams do you do when you work in the hospital? It's about what you're learning, or is it?
So you've caught me at the wrong time. I'm really cynical about a lot of this now. I just want to get out and be done. But no, so you still do written exams, which is the bit that the hospital doesn't prepare you at all for, because theory is very different to practice, and common things are common. So all you see is quite a lot of the same thing in the hospital, which you become very good at. But then you get an exam question, and you go, I've never seen this before. I'll give you an example. I had an exam, not the Friday, just gone the Friday before that. And we had about 5 questions on syphilis. Nobody has syphilis anymore. It's not a thing. Like, it is a thing, but it's just not something you see anymore. And all of us walked out of that going, have you seen syphilis? Because I've not seen syphilis. And we get really good at certain things, like heart attacks could do all day, every day. But syphilis, so it doesn't prepare you well to sit exams. The other set of stuff that you do, regardless of what medical school you go to, you always have a legal subject of some sort, so medical law. It's very basic, it's not difficult, but it's just, not to get sued 101. You'll do like a community population health type subject, which, talks about, access to community resources and things for patients. And you'll have your practical side, which is practicing your skills and how to stick needles in people and all that kind of stuff. So that side of it, the practical side, the hospital prepares you very well for if you ask to do things. So I know people that have gone right through certain rotations and have never done like a really simple like cannulation into someone's hand. Have you guys all seen like a cannula being put in? Yeah. Do you know what they are? They're like the little things the little needles that they pop in your hand, and they pull the needle out and they put all your fluids and stuff through it. So it's pretty much what they teach you in your second year of medical school on a fake plastic arm. And there's people that right through their first year at the hospital never did one on a real person. And that's because no one's going to ask you, because you're going to take half an hour to do it as opposed to 10 minutes. So everyone's like, oh, do we have to get the medical student to do it? And B, they don't want to put you on the spot. So you need to walk up to someone and say, hey, I really need to practice this skill. Can you help me? Can you either show me? Can you watch me do it? Whatever. So what I always say is see one, watch one. Sorry, get someone to watch you do one, and then start teaching other people how to do it. Because if you can't verbalize how to do a procedure or how to do something to someone else, you probably don't know it. Yeah? So approach people, take the opportunities, and you have to kind of muster the courage to do that and ask questions and that kind of thing. Anything else? Did you guys come here with any questions today? Any curiosities?
Is the bonded places and the rural bonded places, are they worth going?
Depends. How much do you want to do medical school? So it's a very, I guess, subjective answer. Yeah, I mean, with the rural bonded places, you are kind of tied to do a certain number of years rurally. Keep in mind, that's not during your medical school years or even your like junior doctor years. That's during your boss consultant years where you're like a specialist in some fancy specialty. So it's quite a while down the track, and what you're thinking is going to be at that point in your life, it's very hard to say. But if you were to ask me, I would take it. Because worst case scenario, you can always buy your way out of it. And you can pay the money and you don't have to do it anymore. So if you really hate the idea of going rural, take the position and save all your pennies and then pay your way out of it. It's a lot of money, but something you can do. Yes?
Do you know much about the process of dentistry?
As opposed to medicine? So dentistry, from my understanding, is very similar in terms of UMAT. You have to sit UMAT and you gain all the entry there. but I wouldn't be able to tell you much more than that. You're better off. Actually, we had a graduate from my year who just got into dentistry this year, actually. So she spent a few years doing oral health and things like that, trying to get into dentistry. But I can always ask her and find out what the process was and send an email through or something. But yeah. Is that what you want to do, dentistry? Let me tell you, smart choice. No, I'm kidding. It's a far more relaxed lifestyle, like after you finish university. After you finish uni and med school, it only gets harder. And you have to be willing to work and put that work in. So don't do it for the money, because the money doesn't make the cut for how much work you put in. You have to do it because you love it. Plus dentists earn a whole lot more money anyway.
That with dentistry, my mom's a dentist, and if you work to earn lots of money, you have to work private. And on the Gold Coast, at least, there's like one dentist for 300 people, which is just not enough. So you have to fight for every patient. So you do have, it's less work and your hours are negotiable, but you have that stress that, oh my gosh, I'm not booked 2 days in advance. I don't earn anything. I can't pay for my
And I'll tell you, very similar things happening in the medical field right now, where the more you kind of familiarise yourself with it at this stage, and this might sound years and years ahead for you guys, but I would say that it's important for you to be aware of it, is that there's this bottleneck in the training system. So we've got all these medical student positions. There's, I think, the newest intake at UQ, 600 medical students. Like, what? 600 per year. But once they finish and they do their intern position, because Queensland Health guarantees you an intern spot, so that's all great. You'll do your intern position and things, and then you go, okay, now I need to specialise. There's just not enough positions. And when I say not enough, I mean hardly anyone gets training positions anymore as a percentage. So you could be stuck waiting for a training position for ages because there's just this bottleneck. So it's a numbers game, and what I can say is, in this day and age, it's very much who you know rather than what you know. So as soon as you get out there, start networking. Start talking to the right people, start smiling at the right people. Be a really easy person to get along with, because at the end of the day, no one cares how smart you are if you are a pain to work with. Nobody cares if you are not easy to get along with. Whereas knowledge and skills, they can teach you, but they can't teach you to be a functional member of a team and be easy and nice to get along with, and they don't want to. So a lot of people get into it wanting to, be the smartest and get the best grades and do this and that, whereas very few people look at that. Smile, be nice to people. Don't annoy people, because that's where you get into trouble, is if you tick the wrong people off. Any other questions? Yes.
If you start doing some research in your undergrad, is it possible to continue it sort of not really during the first 2 years?
Griffith has recently moved to an MD program, which actually gives you the option to do research during your actual medical school years. So, to answer your question, you could probably continue it through first and second year, but again, I would really question the workload. I would strongly question the workload. But if research is something you're interested in, there's plenty of opportunities now at the Griffith Medical School, at least, and almost every medical school will give you a lot of research opportunity. And because they understand the stresses of and the demands of medical school, they'll be a little bit more lenient with it too. So if I was to say anything, if you guys want to start research, start once you start your actual 4 years of med, or how many other years anywhere else. So UQ's now moved to a 3-year undergrad and a 4-year medical program. Yep, you guys are aware of that. Don't let that deter you. That's the other thing. People want to fast track everything and get into stuff really quickly and finish as young as they possibly can. But I'll tell you, so I'm 21 now. I'll turn 22 at the end of this year. I walk into a room and the little old lady in the bed looks at me and she goes, "You could be my granddaughter." And I'm like, great, so you're already not taking me seriously. So does come some benefit with age and wisdom and being able to carry yourself and that type of thing. So you don't have to rush it. And the majority of graduates are postgraduate students. So you have a better chance of getting in at that point. So don't freak yourself out now. Don't let the pressure get to you now. There's always a chance. And it's amazing. There's people who are graduating with me that did like 4 years at the conservatorium, did music for 4 years, and then just decided, hey, I want to be a doctor. And started at medical school, and they're doing great. So if there are little passions that you guys want to explore and things that you want to, look into, do it. You can always come back to med school. You don't have to be the youngest. There's like a 47-year-old person graduating from my cohort. It's fine. Change your career anytime. We live in a country that allows you to do that, so you can take advantage of that. Cool. Any other questions? Yes?
During medical science, can you choose your timetable? Like, you have to do these courses. Can you choose what times to go to the lectures?
Yep, so it just depends on how they structure the courses. So it'll be like anything else. Some subjects will only have one lecture, and that's the lecture slot that you go into. Some will have 2 or 3, so you can decide which lecture stream you want to do. With just touching on that, medical science works very similar to almost every other undergraduate, with the exception of your summer and winter semesters. So you will be able to timetable your courses, and you'll hang out with a lot of the biomed students and things like that. Make friends with them, because most of them are probably going to end up in med with you. So don't just hang out with like the 30 med scis that there are. In my year, there was 12 med scis. 12 from the Gold Coast, 12 up in Brisbane. Now there's 30 at each campus. But don't just hang out with them. Make friends with other people while you have the chance anyway. Medical school, on the other hand, works completely differently. So you have 4 main subjects. So your theory, your practical, your law, and your population health. And that's how you sit your exam. So you're assessed in each of those 4 topics in the middle of the year and at the end of the year for some. If you fail any one of those subjects, you fail the whole year, and you redo the whole year. So it's not like undergraduate degrees where if you fail one subject, you just repeat that one subject. If you fail any component in that year, you end up repeating the whole year. Yes?
If you fail in the second semester, do you still do that?
So it doesn't really work like semesters. Like it does, but the structure's completely different. That's why I'm saying you're in a world of your own. Your holidays are completely different to everybody else. Your weeks off are completely, everything's completely different. So if you do fail the second semester, you end up repeating the whole year. Because it's cumulative. So the exam that you sit in the middle of the year, and for most years now they don't even have a mid-year exam, you just sit all your exams at the end of the year. And they'll kind of add them together, and if you pass overall, you pass overall, but if you fail overall, you repeat the whole year.
How many people get accepted into medical school for teaching?
As a postgraduate or undergrad?
Postgrad.
As a postgrad, so it's about 2/3 postgrad, 1/3 undergrad, so there's about 60 undergraduate students going through now, and about 100 and maybe 110-ish.
Griffith has an undergraduate med.
That's what medical science is.
Okay.
So Griffith technically is a postgraduate course, which is why they get you to do the medical science degree, because you need to have an undergraduate degree to get into the medical program. So they just cram it all in 2 years and you graduate, and then you're like, okay, now I'm off to med school. So that would be your direct entry, which means you don't have to sit GAMSAT. And UQ has something very similar to that process, whereas some are purely undergraduate and some are purely postgrad. Yes?
Is there any point in, if you get into medical science, can you still use that as a degree to get a job if you quit and don't do medicine?
So that was one of the things that attracted me to Griffith. When you say you can use it to get a job, I'm going to say no, because everybody these days is graduating with some kind of science degree. Whether you've done a Bachelor of Science, Biomed, Health Science, Medical Science, all the same. You need to do further study. So typically the pathways you'll go down are research or teaching pathways, but But yes, it is a complete undergraduate degree. So you will graduate and you will have an undergrad degree. So you can decide to choose your pathway after that, however you want. Any other questions? Are you guys willing to move? I see some nods, I see some head shakes. I'll put my hand up, I was terrified to move. The longer I could stay with mum and dad, the better. And then I moved out of home at the start of last year and now I'm questioning my decision. I have to do my own washing and I have to cook and adulting is hard. Any other questions? Yes?
Do people turn up in their pajamas at early courses like middle degrees?
I'm not entirely sure whether anyone did do that.
Apparently some of the people in engineering do that.
Maybe. I mean, I suppose you could. The thing with med-sci, for sure, do whatever you want. With medical school, they're very strict on dress codes and you have to look professional at all times and they'll label you as doctors in training, so you have to behave like a doctor at all times. That's a bit... So no, you probably can't do that. But the doctors did invent something called scrubs, which are pretty much pajamas and they're wonderful. And you can buy them online and start wearing them now. They're great. Any more questions? Yes?
How did you handle it the first time you had to break the bad news to somebody?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask for that because I'm quite comfortable communicating things with people. But the advice that I can give you is treat anyone like a person. It doesn't matter whether they're a patient or they're a friend or they're a family member. How would you tell someone bad news? You don't want to spurt out all this information at them and be like, okay, see you later, and just walk out of the room. So you kind of say, hey, look, so I've got the results back. The news isn't great. Then you wait and wait for them to process the fact that the news might not be great. Then you tell them the bad news. And then you got to wait again, and then you got to process it. So people, and in a half an hour consult when you break bad news to somebody, people only remember about 3 facts that you've told them. So one of them being that they've got cancer or whatever you've told them, or that somebody's passed away or something. So remember that you might tell them all of these wonderful medical things that you want them to do so that they have the best and longest life. They're not going to remember it. Call them back, talk to them again once they've gone home and had their cry and had their support and all of that. You've got to get comfortable with it. With all your exams and stuff, practice on your families. I had Dad on the bed and I was feeling for his liver and stuff, and then he started laughing at me and put them through it. It's funny. Any other questions? From the year 11s, or are you just all here for a little bit of keen bean knowledge? Cool. All right, I'm happy to take questions individually if anyone wants to, but you guys can all rush off. I know it's 3 o'clock and you want to get home, have food, finish ABW week.
Do you so you practically make your own timetable to a certain extent during both undergraduate and med school?
Not med school. Not medical school. You pretty much need to block out 8 a.m., 7, 8 a.m. right through to 5, 6 p.m. Which makes working hard, but you do it. You got to stay flexible. But you're undergraduate, definitely.
Is it full days in medical school?
Yep. Yeah. Yay. And it's unpredictable. That's the thing. So someone will tell you that you finish at 3 o'clock, and you're like, okay, I'll plan something for 4. You won't finish till 5, and you'll get out of there. Surgeries never go on time. You're just standing there waiting for it to finish, and you're like, can they have their gallbladder out already, please? I really need to get to this thing. They won't. It'll be the day that you have something planned that it'll go till 6, and someone will have a complication, and then you feel like a horrible person because there's a complication and you want to leave. And all right. More questions?
We'd like to thank you so much for coming here today and giving us all the tips and tricks to keep us motivated. Definitely inspiration for all of us. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I hope you guys learned something. And I'm happy to talk to anybody individually. Send me emails, whatever. I'm happy to. Yeah. Do you guys, if you want my email, I can give it to you later, or Miss Sleeman can pass it on. But yeah. All right, beautiful.
Thank you.